Okay, guys, good morning. Something I woke up with on my mind today was about the difference between communities, and the point of me making these daily vlogs is basically a lot of you have seen me driving Africa, you've seen what I do, but you don't see what goes on inside my head. So, if you want to live the experience through watching me on camera with my car, going through swamps and so on, that's great. And I really appreciate that. It's truly an honor, when people say that to me. So thank you for living vicariously and enjoying me, enjoying myself. I appreciate that very much, and you're so kind in the comments. I can't keep everybody happy, but that's not the goal, but most of you truly are, and I'm very grateful for your feedback. So when I make these vlogs now, it's going to be explaining what goes on inside my head while I'm driving my car in Africa. And a lot of what goes on in my head is thinking about back at home, thinking about my childhood, thinking, just how I grew up, a lot of it. I'm in my element down there, so I'm just so relaxed, disconnected from my business, from home, from anything going on back here. I'm just in my element, and I'm just put my tunes on, enjoying my exhaust, my car, the modifications I've done to it to make it cope with the difficult roads in Africa. Just enjoying camping in nature and waking up to the wildlife every morning, the noises, and seeing it around me. But I want to talk about community today. So, at the moment I've got a GoFundMe running for Nelson and Superman. And you may have seen the video where I broke down in the north of Zimbabwe and my car chassis completely snapped. And these guys, the word spread in the villages that, there's a white guy in town and he's broken down with his car. And people are just amazing. People walked up to 6 kilometers through the bush to come and try and help me. And in the end, there was like 20 men there. And I know a lot of people would say, okay, white guy, money. But it's not like that. Yeah, okay. Everyone in Africa is looking for a job. There are not enough jobs and everyone wants to work, which is pretty much the opposite of Europe. There's loads of jobs going, but nobody wants to do them, That's obviously partly because we just give money for free in the job centres, which is the poison of our societies, our job centres, handing out free money. And, obviously the people the type of characters that handouts create are also, generally speaking, the poison of society too. So, but that's, the point is that everyone down there wants to work. They're desperately looking for work. They want to feel fulfilled. They take pride in their work. And the Africans, generally speaking, have a lot of pride. They may not have a lot of money, but they have a lot of pride, I'm telling you. They go to church on a Sunday. They look after their whole families. The children spend time with their grandparents. The children work for their parents. They work for them. Like if we're in Europe now sat here, you may be watching this as a parent thinking, what? Seriously? Kids working for their parents, like washing their cars or collecting groceries or helping them carry stuff. I mean, this is almost becoming unheard of in Europe now. The thought about having a child, a lot of people in Europe, it puts them off because they think I can't afford it. But, a lot of, in Africa, when you have a child, the children help you. So they're not just a burden or an expensive cost that you can't afford. They're a benefit to the family. Not in just the way that they have loving, warm, close families, but they all help. I can be sat down with a gentleman in the side of a road I've just met outside his shop, and his kids will be coming and going with sacks of rice and supplies for the shop, bringing us a couple more beers out of the fridge. And don't get me wrong, There has to be balance in this. We're lacking balance in discipline. We don't, our governments have made it illegal to discipline anyone, adults, children, anyone. Discipline is illegal in Europe, Bosses can't say to their employees, if you weren't such an alcoholic, maybe you'd be able to get here for work on time. You can't say to somebody, a doctor can't say to somebody, right, it's because you're fat that you're so sick. So what happens? The alcoholic just gets more of an alcoholic and the fat person just gets fatter. And then our society goes in the toilet. And then in Africa, you've got discipline. So when the kids misbehave, they get a slap round the head. And then they don't misbehave again for another 5 years. We're not allowed to smack bottoms. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about kicking your kids around and beating the crap out of them. I'm talking about a fair amount of discipline which used to be allowed in the UK and in Europe, a smack bottom, and it's not allowed anymore. The hierarchy in the household is that the kids run most households and the parents have to fight and walk a tightrope, a very thin line between what the laws say and the allowed amount of discipline you're allowed to hand out is like this. If you're lucky, you can just take their Xbox off them without them beating you up, In Africa, it's not a case of the kids run the house and then the wife is second and the man comes at the bottom with no rights. He just goes to work and shuts his mouth. In Africa, the man runs the house and then the wife and then the children. That's how the hierarchy's been for hundreds of thousands of years. It's just that recently in Europe it changed, So it leads to no discipline when the children are running the house, right? There's no man of the house anymore. There's no one to dish out the discipline. So what happens then is you just get kids that never even washed your car in your whole life. And what do you do with your wages when you come home on a Friday? You just shove it up their ass. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Oh, the new PlayStation's out. Oh, the Arabs have just brought out new FIFA tokens on their new game. Can I borrow your credit card? If you don't lend it me, I'll steal it from you. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all kids are like this in Europe. But, there's a big variety. There are kids, there are good kids in Europe too, but the parents are exceptional parents. To be able to raise kids in Europe without any proper discipline and have them turn out right, they are exceptional. I respect you guys so much. I can't say I don't have children. I don't know what it's like to have children, but from just seeing them as a stranger of 93 countries in different communities and the way that they behave and the pride from their parents, we're slipping in Western society in general, So the point I'm getting to is that when you're driving through Africa and all you see is the children smiling, playing, adults are smiling, playing. You might stop at traffic lights and the adults are pulling at each other and you're thinking, oh my God, there's a fight going on over there. Yeah, well, believe it or not, I've just driven 33 African countries. I've never seen a fight. The Africans are not aggressive. They are church-going, friendly, warm-hearted, family-loving gardeners, Some points when I've parked my car in a car park overnight, in a car garage where they're fixing it for me, I'd be looking at the guy who says, I'll give you a lift home. And he's like the owner of the garage. And I'm looking at him thinking, can I trust him? Is that car going to be there in the morning when I come back? And then, on the way to taking me to my hotel, he stops at the church. He's like the pastor of the church or whatever. And there I am, sat there looking at this guy thinking, I thought maybe something might happen to my car or something, I'm not even religious. This guy is stopping at the church to see the security guard give him an extra tip and say, keep an eye on it for me, for Charles, you know. Like, these people are solid, like warm-hearted, good people. Not like you see on the BBC News or on the news in general. Bad news sells, right? That's why when we see anything about Africa, we just see the bad things that go on. Because people don't pay for good stories, generally speaking. They'll pay for some exceptional ones, but that's the sad part. So nobody visits Africa, and then they hardly have any tourism, which leads them into even more suffering. You know, we shouldn't forget that we are the aggressors. We went there, especially the UK, and stole everything that they have, all the diamonds, gold, everything. I think we went to India and we took $41 trillion or pounds worth from them, you know, in their assets. And then we run around here with all our Bentleys and stuff, like, oh, that road's bad down there, some potholes on it, I'm sick of this government. It's disgusting when you compare the communities. Like, it changes your brain. I struggle to have empathy now for people in Europe, even if they are in poverty. I was in poverty here in England when I was younger. I was hungry for 7 years. You know, I've raised myself since I was 13. But if you've driven 33 African countries and you come back, you struggle to find empathy for people in Europe, because you look at people and you think, if you were born with a British passport in your back pocket, you're filthy rich. It doesn't matter what you do in your life or what happens to you, you're filthy rich, because that is pure freedom, yeah? So you end up losing empathy towards people in Europe because you've seen so much worse and on such a large scale. So you can see where the boys welded my car together back in Zimbabwe, the reel I was talking about before. They just all turned up, walking 6 kilometers through the bush, and then I just thought that car was dead. And I'm a very capable person, and I used to be a mechanic, but you know, anyone knows, any mechanic knows, looking at that video, the chassis snapped, like the top of the strut dome housing, you know, is completely snapped out. By European standards, forget it, it'd be a write-off. I mean, we write cars off here just because they've got a little scrape on the rear quarter and everyone wants $10,000 a minute to work on it, you know? So these guys, you know, Superman turns up and he's like, don't worry, Charles, we'll have this running tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm thinking like, put that beer down, Superman, you know? Like, it's just like unbelievable. I slept in that shop doorway a few nights, and yeah, they did it. 20 guys showed up next morning, welded that shit back together. Nelson did. Unbelievable, with his sunglasses on, you know, his Ray-Bans, you know, just unbelievable. You know, that is real community, you know, and the thing that I believe is what's destroyed our communities here in Europe, where is money divides, right? So down there, they don't have any. So they all share everything. They say, oh, I need a hammer. Okay, well, Dave's got one, like at the end of the road, or I need some nails, right, in the next village by Steve, or whatever, right? And they'll walk all the way there and all the way back, and everyone knows what everyone's got, everyone shares what everyone's got. You know, why is it here that we have to have 100 houses on a road and we have a lawnmower in every shed in every back garden, which we only use twice a year? What the hell happened to us? Why can we not just have one person on the road who has a very high quality lawnmower and we all go there to borrow it from him? You know, what's wrong with that? Why do we have to create so much waste? These things are used twice a year and they stand in the shed 10 years and then they've rusted up and then we throw 99 of them away, or even 100 of them away, and they've not even seen 5% of their motor life inside. In Africa, everything gets used to the end. And that's exactly what I do with stuff. I buy high quality in the first place and use it to the end of its life, and then repair it and then use it again until it's completely like dust, just like the Africans do. And that's what I'm doing with my car, Dynamo. You know, that's why I'm sponsored by Toyota, because it's a destruction test to take such a little car on such treacherous roads. You're pushing that car to pass beyond any limits it was designed for. You know, so but I'm using that car to the end of its life. I took it to Africa because I didn't want to just scrap it because the test was up. What, because of a few brake pads and some tires? Scrap it. What about the rest of the car? You know, our standards in Europe are designed as a form of marketing too. Don't get me wrong, it's very important to have the standards we have for safety reasons, but it goes too far. Right? This is ridiculous. Just throw everything away and buy everything new and then pay everyone $10,000 a minute. And that's why we're all buying from China and then you throw it in the bin next day. You know, stop doing that. Buy top end, best quality you possibly can. If you can afford it. I mean, I was very poor at one time too, but you know, a friend of mine, his mother says, I haven't got enough money to buy cheap clothes. Or there's a saying that you buy cheap, you buy twice. If you just buy the highest quality first time and go on eBay or Amazon and like, well, fuck Amazon, but like, you know, it's a scumbag. But if you go online and sort highest price first instead of lowest price first, I'm telling you, most of the time you'll only end up spending the same amount of money. It'll last much longer and there'll be much less disappointment in your life. You know, maybe even get your neighbour to chip in and share whatever it is. You know, especially if it's like a lawnmower or something that you only use occasionally. But you know, it's shocking the amount of stuff that we throw away and waste. So you know, they got my car up and running again, and I continued. You know, I paid them. You know, paid them well, and I continued. And it was 10 hours to the next cash machine or fuel station, and I made it in 44 degrees of heat. But the point I'm making is you make a lot of comparisons when you drive in Africa. What's happening to our communities? Why are our children so lazy and do nothing to support their parents? Why are people so entitled? Why, when you watch a police show, does the policeman have to ask somebody 20 times to step out of the car? And I'm not saying, you know, I know it's only 1% of people, but because the person, the criminal in the car is just thinking, I'll get out if I want to. And then when I've got my handcuffs on, the first thing I'll do is ask for a bottle of water, because anything to buy time, to distract from the point or the problem, or to give them time to think about what lies they want to make. If you want to go around Africa stealing cars like that, you know, it's hard, but you're going to get tied to a lamppost. They put tyres around your body from your feet up to your neck, and pour gasoline on you and burn you alive. So guess what? People don't steal cars. Not on the scale that they do here. Yes, they do, but probably because they're absolutely starving to death, right? Or maybe not. But it's only going to be a very low proportion compared to here. You know, on the scale with poverty line and, you know, the reasons why they're doing it and so on, because people don't want to be burnt to death. You know, and I'm not saying that's right. That is extreme discipline. And I'm not saying having child slaves is right if you're a parent and they're doing everything working in your car garage up to here with oil. Children should have their childhood, you know. Every child is entitled to it, and it, in my opinion, it creates a better development for when they're older, you know. You know, everyone should have happy memories of their childhood and stuff. But what I'm saying is the balance is so off. Africa's too far in one way, too much discipline, and Europe is too far the other way, too little discipline. There has to be a happy medium here. But, you know, so we are so lost with too little discipline. You know, people are so entitled because of that lack of discipline. You know, our future generations are being lost because discipline is illegal. You know, so when I go to Africa, it's like a relief for me. It's like, wow, back to smiley faces. You know, like I was saying before, you see guys pulling at each other at traffic lights, and you're like, oh my God, they're going to have a fight. And they turn around 10 seconds later and big smiles on their faces and punch each other on the back. They're playing. African people are so playful. I love them. They're amazing. You can joke with them, have a proper laugh. And I mean like with nearly everyone you meet. Because money ruins people. You know, and I have it in my business here in Europe as well. Something I've learned. You know, I don't want to own properties. I don't care about having millions of dollars and stuff like that. I've always kept my businesses small. But the problem with that is, you know, so ever since we lost our country, our family home, we lost everything. So I started from absolutely nothing. And I'm happy with what I've got. I'm very content. Is that you have to have landlords. Now, even if you have a little business where the room is so small you can touch the walls like that. I've had like a 4 square meter showroom before in Germany. That's 9 square meters in total, but 4 or 5 of it was the bathroom. Let's say it was 5, the showroom floor, you know, like 2 wide by 2 wide, something like that, right? And the guy who owns the house, the house is worth like 2 or 3 million euros. It's in Cologne in the centre. You know, and he's an amazing guy at first, you know, so helpful. He helped me so much. I'm so grateful. But you can't allow people to help you, because even you say like, can I give you something for doing that? People are like, nah, you're all right, mate. You're all right. No worries, no worries. And yeah, I'm not saying everyone. A lot of people mean it, and they genuinely are kind, and they don't expect anything in return. But some don't. They are actually building up a debt in their head because they have a few intention that in the future they want something back. Now that is not good if you're a business owner, because you've asked them how much they want for it and they say, no, you're all right, you're all right. And what happens is it builds up and it builds up. It may be at some point they say, oh yeah, just give me a skateboard, my son's birthday or whatever. But no, that's a mistake. I learned don't do that either, because the value of a skateboard is different from one person to the other person. If you give them cash, then the monetary value is the same to both of you, and you can be very precise and specific about how much you've given, and you can keep your end level with theirs. So what has always happened to me, like it happens to me like every 2 years, I end up having to move my business, because the person who I'm relying on goes from being one of the kindest, most helpful people I've ever met to turning, and instead of looking at you like, I wish the best for you and I'll help you with anything I can, they change. When you get successful and you start doing really well and they can see a queue of customers outside your door, they see that. And then you think, hold on, he's only paying me 150 euros a month rent here. He's bloody doing well out of that little room. And then they're thinking, wow, you know, what about me? You know, and you've already offered them over the years, and you've already given them stuff over the years. And you can't calculate whose end is where, and so on and so on. And you've always been offering, and they've always been saying no. But all of a sudden then you find yourself in way over your head. And they'll be coming to your door, you know, you can't put your bike in the backyard. Can't park it there anymore. Or could you just help us out with this bill? It's a bit over what we expected. You know, you give somebody a crate of beers and they'll be like, have you got another one the next day? So you're like, yeah, give them another one, you know. But that is where it starts. Like, then it's out of control by this point. You know, you're grasping on to try and keep things together and keep the other person happy, because you can see them changing and it becomes intimidating in the end. So, you know, and then they see you going off to travel for 3 months, because I travel a lot. And they realize, oh, this guy, He's got it right. He's going off, he's travelling the world. I wish I'd done that. And then you're thinking, what right does he have to go off and travel the world? You know, they're not looking at the fact that you've spent 25 years building batteries. My business is recycling lithium-ion batteries, by the way. They don't think you've been learning how to build batteries for 25 years. They didn't see the times that you worked the first 3 years in that business and never made a penny. In fact, all of your investment was just sinking, and sometimes you'd be nearly in tears at your desk. They don't see all that. They just think, why? Why does he get all that and not me? And they'll be hanging out the window of a €3 million house while I have like a 5 square meter little box room next door. You know, like the guy's a millionaire, you know. And I'm not saying this was not just one time. This happens every 2 years to me. That someone close to me that tries to help me, they do, oh, it's all right, it's all right. Don't accept that shit. It's not all right. It's not. Sometimes people do mean it, but you can't take that risk. You don't know if that person means it or not. Don't take that risk. And that's why a lot of the time in Europe, you know, you move into an apartment and the neighbour will say, if you need anything, just let me know. You know, this is not true. This is bullshit. They're talking shit. All right, there might be 10% of people that actually mean it, right? You know, I'm a brutally honest person. I don't say it in the first place, you know. You know, so it's like, what I'm saying is that basically, a lot of people in Europe, you can offer to help them if you see them carrying stuff in the street, like a builder. You'd be like, do you want me to get one end of that? And they'll be like, no, you're all right, mate. And they'll struggle with it. And I believe that's because they've realized that they don't want to owe you something, because they don't know what you're like. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people out there, they post to their Facebook and their Instagram, big groups of friends, you know. I love my friends. And that's great. Honestly, I'm happy for you. I respect that. I've always had a small group of friends, you know. Sometimes it can even make me feel a little bit jealous. How do they get so many friends? But the truth is, if you were never homeless like I was, you will never know who your friends are. Yeah? You just go around all of your friends and you say, can I borrow 100 quid off you? You see how many people will lend you the money. Or if you become homeless, go and knock on their doors and say, can I just spend a night here? Stood in the rain outside. That's what I did. And you'll be surprised how many people say no. Oh, well, just the missus is here, so, you know. And I'm thinking, well, she's been there for 12 years, mate, you know. So, and you're just like, right, all right, no worries. And you carry on walking in the rain, you know. So, you know, when I see big groups of people, these are my best friends, they're my brothers, my family, I love them. I always just think, you know, and, you know, I hope it's true. But I thought if you were homeless, probably only 1 or 2 of them might actually take you in. So I don't want to be totally negative about the topic, you know. I've always kept my friend group small because, you know, sometimes, you know, I do get to situations where people have to be tested, where I have to say, can I borrow this or can I borrow that? And people say no, and sometimes it's shocking because someone who you thought was your friend for a long time turns out not to be. So my point is that money divides, and we didn't used to be the way that we are now. You know, we should be able to go to our neighbour's house and say, can I borrow your can opener? We shouldn't say we'll all have a lawnmower in every garage on the whole street. You know, we shouldn't be afraid of that, but people are afraid of sharing stuff because of these certain people that say, yeah, you're all right, mate, but they don't actually mean it. So you can't be bothered with the stress. And we have ridiculous amounts of money, even if we're poor. We all have enough money to buy a lawnmower of our own. And if we don't, that would be considered poverty in the UK. Oh, you can't afford a lawnmower? Jesus Christ, not good that, mate, the way you're living. You know, we shouldn't have to. We should all be able to share, you know. So that was my thoughts this morning. I was waking up and thinking about how the Africans share and help each other in their communities and how we don't. Superman said to me the other day on this fundraiser, he said, I know, Charles, that you're grateful that we repaired your car. He said, but I know that you would do it for me if I was passing through Germany or England. And I read that and I thought, wow, you know, because Superman will never left his village or his country probably. And I felt guilt when I read it because, yes, through traveling, I would help him if he was broken down in my yard, yeah? But the amount of people that would is like virtually nobody, yeah? Even if a guy's girlfriend comes home with a flat tire, or she'd go out to the car in the car park outside their apartment the next day and her tire's flat, he won't even know how to change the wheel. He'll just say to her, call the AA, get them out to do it for you. You know, and having this money, this abundance of money, it means you pay for everything, all these services, which ultimately leaves you lacking skill and experience, and then ultimately makes you weak, which is the point I'm getting to here now. When Corona came along, we just all collapsed, all our communities, and everyone just went psychological problem, mental, like everyone. But what happened in Africa? They just carried on like normal. Why? Because their brains are so strong. They are strong mentally because they've lived through wars. They've struggled every day to pick up pieces of rice off the street that somebody may have dropped, to pick berries from trees or wait till mango season, count the mangoes. When a mango falls from a tree, all the kids from the village race to it, and whoever gets there first gets it and brings it back for their parents, not for themselves, and their parents divide it for the family. You know, so I just wanted to bring this up today because it's in my mind every day when I'm in Europe and I see kids being lazy, and I just see kids running families, or even when I see amazing parents. You know, I've got 2 friends locally here, just amazing parents. You know, the kids are so well raised, but when I look at them, I just think respect. How can you even manage to do that in a society where discipline is illegal? You know, so these are the thoughts that go through your mind after you've seen so much of Africa, and you can't help it. They're not even, I know they're opinions, but it's like your brain changes shape. I couldn't change my mind back if I tried to how it used to be. You know, everything that's going in the trash can here, you know, or anywhere, I'm looking at it thinking, that would be just, you know, I know who could use that. Or, you know, just, I don't know, it changes your life driving Africa. So anyone out there, don't think you need 500 grand and your retirement you're going to wait for to get it to drive Africa. I have proved that you can just go outside, get in your $500 car, any car, turn the key and just go. Yeah, you need some money. It cost me $30,000 over 2.5 years to drive around the outside of Africa. Now, usually somebody would do it in a Hilux, a couple, let's say, and they would probably spend up to 150 grand. Or someone in a big rig would do it in 300 grand. But the truth is, the less money you spend, the closer to the culture you get and the more involved in the communities you are. And if you've followed me for the last 15 years, you will have seen me doing homestays where I stop in a village, there's no guest houses, it may not be ideal for camping because of wild animals or whatever, and I'll just knock on somebody's shack, on their door, if they have a door, and I'll just say, can I stay with your family tonight? And I'll drag a sack of rice out of the car and exchange food for culture. And I'll do a homestay. I'll do one next year when I get back to the car, you know, because a lot of people have not seen that, and that's my thing. That's what I do, you know, and that is, you are experiencing the highest level of culture possible, and what you're giving in return is food, which brings joy and happiness and relief to the family, even if it's just for a few nights, you know. So you are inside that community and in that warm environment. Staying in, you know, if you were spending big money on your trip, your travels, your experience is going to be going down. I read something in The Lonely Planet once. It was Southeast Asia on a Shoestring, it was called, by Lonely Planet. And it's some journalist had written in there, some traveller, the thicker your wallet, the more insulated from the very, you know, the more money you have in your wallet, the more likely you are to be insulated from the very experience you are trying to achieve. So money insulates you from the experience of culture. If I have $100 for dinner, I can go into the Marriott and get a dinner and a dessert, right? What am I going to see that's different in there? People are being friendly with me because they're being paid to be friendly with me. Not always, and partly, and not partly, and whatever, but they are being paid to be friendly. So they could be an unfriendly person. It's just that it's all fake, right? But I'm not saying that, you know. Usually they will be genuinely friendly too, but what experience do you want to achieve staying in a hotel room paying $100 for the room? Yeah? What you come home and you say, you know what, they have different plug sockets there. Yeah. And is that all you saw? So this is my point about spending money on trips. Budget travel is the best way. The less you spend, the bigger your experience, and that's how life balance works. If you're losing one place, you're gaining in another. If you're gaining one place, you're losing in another. You always have to try and work out where that is. But if you say, no, I'm going to stay with this family tonight and put a few kilos of rice on the doorstep, the rice costs very little and the experience is huge. Obviously, you have to take the risk as well. And the risk is always where the reward lies. So, you know, that's just the way I travel. I've circumnavigated Africa on $30,000. A lot of people ask me, why did you choose that car? That is not the right car. I didn't choose it. I just set off. I was originally going from Germany to Portugal on a business trip. And then I noticed the test was running out on the car. So I thought, I'm not going to scrap it because I like to use things to the end of their lives. So I thought I'll drive it to Africa where nobody cares anymore about the documents. And that was it. Once I got there, I thought, all right, I'm going to make the most of this car and drive all the way around this African continent. And for me, it was like reliving my childhood. Because when in my other vlogs, I've already mentioned, growing up, I got my first car when I was 9 years old and we had 12 acres of land. I used to be able to just get in it, drive it, no documents, race it around, no speed limits, just, you know, just recklessly jumping over hills and driving up hillsides and getting stuck in mud. You know, just that freedom I missed so much ever since we lost our home when I was 16. You know, because then I was out on the main road on the public highways like everyone else. You know, most people grew up where you step out your front door and you stood on somebody else's land. You know, and I find that like a lot of people that have travelled hugely over land, it would be generally like an Australian farmer or someone that had 40,000 hectares or 4 million hectares or whatever, because they grew up in that environment where you just get on your vehicle, no documents, and go where you want. You know, and that's the freedom that Africa gives me, is to feel, relive my childhood again, to be able to just to be able to do that, you know. I mean, the driving is absolutely mental in Africa. So you have to learn how to drive like everybody else, because if you don't drive like them, somebody's going to come in the back of you when you get to a red light, you know. If everyone's going through, you're going through too. Anyway, I think that's enough for today's talk. I think I've got a lot off my chest there, but all I wanted to say is if you're planning on having kids, you know, make sure you choose the right person. Like, because I'm just saying, I don't have kids, but I'm just saying, you know, just like be aware at least that, like, our communities are slipping. And I wish you all the best from what I've seen with families and stuff and how people turn out. Just, you know, if you want to drive Africa, get in your car and just drive it. Get down there and get on with it. Just walk out of your job, you know, get in your car, put your rucksack on the back seat and drive it. Because most people have got enough money if they sell what they've got to go and do that trip that I've just done. It'll change your life. It'll reshape your brain. It's life changing completely. So, yeah, until the next one, guys. Yeah, just another part that I just didn't complete is that basically over the years, every 2 years, I see a pattern. You know, because I'm going traveling and coming back to the office and I've got a very good deal on the office or the house share or the apartment or whatever it may be, you know, I can't really say the truth about what it is, but all I can say is that basically, you know, people try to pull you down. They don't like it. Even though they're stood in a €3 million house, and you're renting a tiny little office which is not even suitable for the purpose for €150 a month, if that person has built up a debt in their minds against you, always saying, it's all right, don't worry about it, right? They have often, and like I say, it's been 3 or 4 times in 8 years now, they will start trying to sabotage your business or your home. They will hound you and never leave you alone because it eats away at them inside that maybe they didn't go to travel themselves, you know, or, you know, it's something that's difficult. I mean, I've been stood in this workshop I was just telling you about before, this tiny little thing. You would never think that anybody could really think anything of it, you know, if you were successful in there. But the guy in the end, he basically he cut off the heating, and then he unplugged my router in the cellar from the internet and locked the cellar door. You know, and in the end, I was working in there with my long jacket on in winter, preparing for Christmas sales, and with my customers coming getting cold. And my PC was connecting to the internet through my mobile phone, you know, and it's not just one time it's happened. It's happened to me like every couple of years. You know, he even started trying to introduce new opening hours for my shop to say people can't come on Saturdays anymore, which is my best day, or people can't come after 5 p.m. anymore. None of this was in the bogus contract they gave me. I mean, the contract they gave me was not worth the paper it was written on, but none of this was ever mentioned when I first moved in, you know. And I've heard a saying recently is that, like, people want to help you get up to their level. They want to help you, give you a hand up, but it's when you go past them that they want to try and slow you down. And it just feels like that a lot of people have been slashing my tires when I'm winning the race, you know. So I don't want to go into too much detail or be too negative about it, but if there's anyone else out there that feels this way and it's been happening to them, I think you can just say, just know you're on a winner, basically. It's a good sign. Don't take it as a bad sign. Take it as a good one. That's what I've started to do now. It just means you're winning the race. So don't think, oh, why are they doing that to me? Oh, it's the end of the world. Life's miserable. It's not, you know. So, you know, these people have cost me and lost a lot of money. In the end, he was stealing from me, like stealing. He stole goods from me. He stole my electronics from me in the end, you know. So, you know, just be careful who you accept help from. And just know that secret debts are building with some people, not with all, you know. But the problem is you don't know with who. So I think that's why most people refuse all help in the first place. Right, anyway, I'm done. I'm out. See you soon, guys.